Hi, it's Helen and Wick with Camino Provisions.
Today, we're going to answer the questions that people most often ask us when they first hear about the Camino.
So stay tuned. Okay, so we're going to tackle the three questions that people ask the most often when we start talking about the Camino. The first one is usually, do you have to walk the whole thing? The second one is something like, well, but I only get 2 weeks of vacation, and I hear people talk about taking 30 and 40 days to walk the Camino. So what can I do? Can I do anything with 2 weeks? And then the next one is usually having to do with, I have to go to Santiago when I walk the Camino? So we're gonna give you our answers to those questions.
So, the answer to the question, do you have to walk the whole thing? The short answer is no. You do not have to walk the whole thing. You can walk portions of it. However, if you want to Compostela, you have to walk the last 100K into Santiago. And the three most popular routes for the last 100K are first on the Camino Frances to walk from Soria into Santiago. The second is on the Camino Portuguese to walk from Tui into Santiago. And third is on the Camino Inglés, which you walk from Ferrol into Santiago.
Very often, people will ask us or say to us, well, but I've only got 2 weeks. Is there anything I can do on the Camino in 2 weeks?
And the simple answer to that is yes, there is. Then, as we visit with them, we start to find out more about what they envision for their Camino. The first question we generally ask them is, do they want to Compostela? Because if they do, then they have to walk that last 100K into Santiago. And so that dictates what they're going to be doing. If they don't, then they have other options. And I'll give you an example of this. We have dear friends who asked this question of us. They had 2 weeks, but they said they were going as a family, and they really just wanted to spend time in beautiful countryside where it was quiet, being together as family. Mm-hmm. And so what they ended up doing, with some suggestions, they ended up walking from Pamplona to Burgos, because that's a beautiful stretch of the Camino, and you're walking through wine country. And so it's really nice. And there are a lot of pretty towns along that route. Mm-hmm. So they ended up doing that. And when they got home, they called us and they said, all of us can't wait to go back. We want to do it again.
Want to do the whole thing.
Want to do the whole thing next time. And so that was what was right for them. Now, what's the other example we would give?
So the other example I would give is a couple in our family who had, I think, 8 or 9 days that they could spend. And it was very important to them to get those Compostelas.
Right.
And so they chose to walk the Inglés, the Camino Inglés, which goes north to south from Ferrol to Santiago. Right. And they were able to do that in, I think, a week and earn their Compostelas. So depending on what type of Camino experience you want and whether or not you want to earn that Compostela, there are things you can do with not walking the entire 500 miles, let's say.
And both of these families would say that they had a wonderful Camino and they really had the experience they hoped to have.
Yeah, and they can't wait to go back.
Right.
So our hope in answering any of these questions is to help you plan and complete what you can do with the time you have and all the other things that go into whether or not you can actually
Right.
complete your walk. So our tips are all about trying to help you plan and complete your Camino.
The next question that we get quite often is it important to go to Santiago even if we're only walking a portion of the Camino?
My answer to that would be it's important to go for sure if you want the Compostela. We've already talked about that. But even if you are not walking to Santiago to get your Compostela, you're not walking in, it's worth a visit to go to Santiago. Santiago is a beautiful medieval there's an old town portion that's medieval, and it is just a beautiful town. And there's a lot to do there. There's that pilgrim vibe of everybody coming into the square as they finish their walks, and all the emotions with that. We love just going to the square in front of the cathedral, the Plaza Obradoro, and watching that. And there is a lot to do in Santiago, enough that even if you don't complete your Camino in that city, you might want to catch a bus and go to it just to experience the city. What happens if you get hurt or have to take a day off because you're so tired and fall behind your schedule? What do you do then? What happens then?
Well, the first thing that I would say is that you even though you have limited time, you may be tempted to walk faster than your normal pace. You need to walk your comfortable normal pace. Most of the injuries happen because people are trying to do more than they're really used to doing. And so they end up having a problem.
And an example of that is my story from 2007, our first Camino. I did lots of things that were not good to do. One of the biggest ones was having a pack that was way too heavy for me. And the very first day, though we didn't know it until 2 weeks later, the very first day walking from Saint Jean to Roncesvalles, I got a stress fracture in my foot from the distance, elevation, and the way heavy pack that I was carrying. And so what I should have done to avoid that injury was to have a pack that was a manageable weight and not to try to go the whole distance in that
particularly
one day,
on the first day,
because we were jet lagged. Yeah. And it was our first. We just spent one night and very little sleep, and got up and tried to do too much too fast. So that is what happened to me, and I ended up having to eventually give up walking that time and take a bus into Santiago and get crutches.
So you just heard one of the answers to the question if something happens.
Yeah.
There really are taxis and buses in Spain. And therefore, what we recommend doing if you need to take a day off and you get off schedule would be, except for that last 100K, if you're trying to get a Compostela, we would say, take the day off, get rested, and then when you're able to walk again, if you need to, take a taxi or a bus to get where you want to start walking again. And that saves your schedule and it saves your body. Yeah. So we recommend that. The other thing that we recommend is the pack transport. We didn't hear about this early in the trip that Helen was telling you the story about, but I heard about it later, and it has saved us so many times. as we've gone back, because all we're now carrying is a day pack. We're not saying that that's what you should do necessarily, but we want you to know that service is available, and all you can get wherever you're staying. You just talk to them. They give you the little paperwork. You put some money in an envelope, and they take your pack to where you're going that day. Yeah. And that can just be a huge relief as you're trying to recover from either an injury or just being tired.
So to summarize, the big tips are to set your own pace, and you determine what that is. I've described in another video how to plan for that. You figure out your walking speed and how many hours a day you think you can walk day after day after day, and then determine the distance you think you're going to cover and choose your route. But if you do fall behind, like Wick was describing, there are pilgrim services that can help you keep going and complete what you set out to do. The pack transport, which takes a lot of workload off of your body if you have an injury that needs to be rested or just lighten your load, and then the taxi or bus service that you can hop on to get to a place which will allow you to stay on schedule for your flights or your travel home, whatever that is. We hope this information and these tips will help you as you consider and plan your Camino. And as always, we would ask that if you enjoyed this and would like to see more, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done it. Ring that bell and you'll be notified when we release another one. And until next time, we wish you
Buen Camino.